And what I would like for you to do is introduce yourself and how you show up in service to the world, because we haven't done that in a little bit. And I want to hear the best thing that's happened to you over the last week, and then we're going to jump into the law of cause and effect.
Okay. I can start.
Okay. Are you in a new
Yes.
office?
No, I'm not. I have my big lights turned on, but I don't know that I often meet you all here. I'm usually at home.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, my name is Chantal, and how do I serve? I show up in service to the world by tuning in and growing and learning more and more about myself on a spiritual level, emotional level, psychological level, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the best thing that's happened to me, this week is, so my girlfriend went to a funeral. That's not the best thing that happened to her, and asked me to look after her dogs on her farm. And I said, yes, I would love to do that. And so I've been on the farm for the last few days, and it has created a lot of space for me to be. And that has been really beautiful. Like, I just have had time to explore things, try things, listen to new things. It's been a real blessing.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So thank you. Thank you. And for asking that question, because it got me thinking about that. Shauna, you can go.
Okay, so show up in the world and the best thing that's happened to me. Yes, okay. So my name is Shauna McInnes. I show up in the world by assisting people meet their real estate goals, by loving them through the entire transaction and educating them to the best of my ability. and being a really, really good grandma and mom and wife and daughter, and loving on my people. The best thing that's happened to me. I think since our last meeting, probably the best thing that's happened to me, it's always all about my grandkids, because that's like where I find so much of my joy these days. Because it just, yeah, work doesn't seem to come into it. But I took my grandsons, the two little ones, to the water park that I'd never been to a water park, and I'm 57. So I took them to a children's museum and a water park in a town about 45 miles away. And we just had such a great time. They were just such brave little toasters, and they did the things, and it was just a really fun day. So I think
That's awesome.
that's probably it.
That's awesome. Okay, so a couple pieces of follow-up before I start the teaching. Shauna, what happened with the property that you were going to purchase? Did everything get handled?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have a couple things that have come up since then, but yes. Yeah, and just like, maybe this is the best thing that happened to me. So we got quoted an 8% interest rate on that loan for an investment property. And yesterday, Randy's like, interest rates should have come down. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to call and find out. And he said, well, our lender, Valerie, I saw Valerie's mom broke her hip yesterday, so she's not in the office. And I'm like, I don't care if she's in the office. I'll call and talk to whoever's in the office. 6.25, ladies. Hello. Oh, so Jack, I just thought, yeah. Anyway, that was super exciting. So yes, it did get to.
Awesome. And so, Shauna, an exercise that I want you to do is I want you to notice where you let go, because part of your thing was, I don't want to be harping. So where you said, hey, this has to be done, blah, blah, blah. He said he'd go do it. Like, where you backed off and it worked. Even if it's one or two things out of 20, right? Because I want you to be able to tap back into that.
Okay.
When this comes up again, because your natural instinct, and I'm using your words, not mine, is to harp, right? Like, and so your natural instinct is fear, that things aren't going to get done based on past experiences, but like the more and more you're able to let go, and two things here, let go in incremental steps to help you feel safe. And also because as you're changing the rules on someone, you can't just throw a light switch into it and expect them to do it all, right? Because they're not used to it. So the more and more you do that, then the more and more you empower him and you empower yourself. So do a little bit of journaling on that and note how you felt in that situation too, so you can tap back into that. Okay. And then Chantel, I
Mm-hmm.
want to know, because you made a revelation in the Get Shit Done Day, and then you and I had our one-on-one. And I know, Shauna, you had a session, I think, with Adriana, and Chantel, you had a session. So I'm interested to know how those went. And Chantel, you had a session with Lachelle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to know, like, where are you at with your business model? Because you had made the statement on the Get Shit Done Day that you were like not making money, right? Like that you were
Mm-hmm.
spending more than what you were bringing in as far as like all of the things. And I know we were
Yeah,
looking at different things as far as business models. So tell me where you've landed.
for sure. So yeah, and feeling like it's a continued evolution as well.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that word letting go, because I think that's like one piece, even over the weekend, or I don't know, what are we today? Yeah, we're Tuesday. Okay. So while I was at the farm, and apparently time doesn't matter so much out there because what I wanted to say about that is that I was preparing to send out notes about the happiness pill, and I did a promotional email piece, um, as part of saying, you know what, like I'm gonna do what feels passionate to me, and I can't make other people like want to see clients. So I'll do what I can on my front. I'll have the conversations with them, and I will also do what I can do. So I created an email chain for the happiness pill program that's happening in September, and I sold 2 over the weekend. Just like, yeah, like really easily. Like I didn't even have to have a conversation with anybody. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I enjoy talking to people. It was just like, oh, it's that easy.
Oh, I
And
love
yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I also created if I can have just a smidge more airtime, I also created a survey for my clinicians to really get them to reflect on who it is that lights them up to work with, so that we can work together to attract the clients that they most feel passionate about working with. Of course, considering like our mission is to work with adolescent girls, but based on some of the conversation we have had, Debbie, it's allowed me to really let go of that like very slim perspective of like, this is how I can fill the caseloads, this is how I can make money in my business, and to open it up a little bit, a lot, I would say, broader in my mind about like the how.
Yeah.
I don't
Good.
know if that makes sense to y'all, but it's making sense in my head.
Yeah. And
So
Shauna,
oh, go ahead.
to give a little context, one of the things, the questions that I asked Chantel is she has two or three other people that are taking clients, and she's been taking the responsibility of how do I fill their books? And I said, well, what if you opened it up? Like, does it matter that they see only young girls? Like, could they see other people? And that was a big shift for you, Chantel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I was living in the kind of the all or none, black or white, where it was like, okay, either like we can only serve these folks, or my message is diluted and confusing. Like there were only the 2 possibilities that were existing in my mind. And then after I took some time to think about what we had talked about and just, checked in with myself, I was like, yeah, actually it's just not either or. It's actually, there's like a continuum of possibilities of what that could look like.
Yeah. Oh, good. I can't
Cool.
wait to see what happens with that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited as well. So, and just feeling like much more aligned again with like the business and the mission and the vision and everything. And it's a process.
Yeah.
Did you see that, excuse me, did you see that some of them had an interest in seeing other people than just the adolescent girls, and that might fill their bucket a little bit more?
Yeah. So only Jessa got back to me so far. I have a meeting with Chippo next week. But she responded almost immediately on our Slack channel, which is kind of our group chat. And she was like, that sounds so great. Like, yes, I'm super excited about that. And she's actually working on her bio refresh right now. And she does EMDR. So she has a specialized training in supporting folks with that. So she's just working to get that up and going so that we can add it to the website. So it seems to have like really landed well for her. And for Carrie too, who is my coach, who's not seeing anybody yet because we haven't officially launched her, but she is like rearing and ready to go. So I'm feeling good about the folks that it's resonating with.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
That's so awesome. Which, Chantal, I was going to tell you, I think you just need to drive down here and get on the same flight, because Shauna, Jessica, me, Meredith, and Marcia are all going to be on the same Delta flight to Belize.
Oh, that put my anxiety down. Yeah. Could I get the details of that? I think I would.
If you go
like
out
that.
to the spreadsheet, you'll see the
Yeah.
deets.
Okay.
And it's we leave on Wednesday night.
Yes.
So drive down Wednesday during the day.
Okay.
And I was gonna try to get to my flight here. And we leave like at 10 something.
Okay.
And then like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Here, I'll get to it right here. Wednesday, September 18th, we leave at 10:59 p.m.
Mhm.
And if you wanted to park your car at my house, you could. If you decide to come back or leave it on the same time. Jessica decided just to fly down at the same time as everybody else and come back the same time. And then what we're going to do is anybody that leaves from here, like Marcia, we might carpool with her too. We're going to park at Meredith's house.
Okay.
And go, so we don't, I mean, I'm fine with paying parking too, so it just would depend on how many of us there are, but we could carpool into Spokane and then carpool back on Monday, and then you would just drive. So so it's an overnight, so we get to Atlanta at like 6 in the morning Eastern time or something like that, 5 in the morning. The Delta Club opens at 6, so I don't know how many people would be able to get in the Delta Club, but anyway, and then we go into Belize at 11 o'clock, and then coming home, we leave at like noon and we get in at 9:49 p.m. So I just need to double check my Airbnb. I don't think I have anybody, but you could just spend the night with me, because we would get home at like 10 o'clock and then get to Sandpoint about midnight. So then you wouldn't get home till Tuesday, but then you could drive home Tuesday morning.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
like that idea of commuting together, and yeah.
But just let me know, because I am gonna start booking those flights early next week for the little puddle jumpers. Because I want to make sure that if all of us are going in at the same time, with the exception of Shireen, that we have, that there's enough flights to get over there.
Okay. Absolutely. Yes, I'm saying yes, and I will keep selling the happiness pills so that I can buy my tickets ASAP.
And if you decide that you do want to do that flight, just let me know, because then I can go ahead and book the small one.
Yeah, I do. I will, as long as like there's a flight for me, I'm a yes for that one.
Okay, I'm sure there probably is. I wish I had some more companion passes.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's on Delta.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have a look at the spreadsheet and book it.
Pretty much everybody, with the exception of Shireen, will then be on that flight. So
okay, all right.
we've been a little masterminding ourselves. So
Or sleeping in my case.
right. Totally. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to shoot you over a little worksheet. And I figured out how to do this so that you can just open this worksheet and then fill it in. You don't have to save it. So in the chat is the worksheet for the law of cause and effect. And what we're going to do is I'm going to walk through the law. And all of this, I realized I didn't put the law of abundance in the universal law sheet. And I think partially because I just always think the law of abundance is like the foundation for all of the other laws, meaning that the law of abundance basically says that the universe has unlimited resources and that everything we want or need is already available to us. And if the desire is known, the how, like the resources are already there and available to us, right? We just have to see it. So all of these are based on, and I'm trying to figure out, do I add like a page at the end that talks about this, or do I put it at the very beginning? So I'm going to be adding something to that because I realized that was an assumption I made. So just keep in mind that the law of abundance is that idea of the vase, where we have this unending supply of energy, this unending supply of resources available to us, right? Because sometimes the energy isn't necessarily what we think of. Like, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, because I have made a commitment for physical health, that I walked this hill that is a bitch. It's like straight up, right? And then there's this little spot that evens out when you think you're going to give up and then it goes back up again. It only takes a half an hour, right? Like, so it's not long. And I walked it for the second time. The first time I walked it, because I sit too much, my muscles were all tight. And so I had to stop 3 times. Monday, I didn't stop at all. That was my goal, not to stop. I get home. I cleaned out my car because my friend Kathy borrowed my car today. I mean, I like wiped down all the inside stuff, you know, because I keep these little like wipes in my car. Then I did 4 loads of laundry for the Airbnb. I made pickled onions. I made soup for this week. I made this kale salad for all week, all before 10:30. I'm like, what the hell's going on with me? Right. And so when we think of energy, sometimes we think of that, right? Like that we're the Energizer Bunny and we keep going and going and going and don't need rest. Well, we're like copy machines. And if we don't take a rest once in a while, right? And like if we don't do maintenance, like, so energy is not just this like, woo, I'm doing a gazillion things, right? It's not, I'm in my masculine getting shit done. Energy is like this love exchange. It is like the resources that you have available to see gratitude. It's the resources that, you know, you owe some money to something and all of a sudden this check appears or this money appears, you know, or you think you're not going to be able to cover something and then somebody forgets to turn off the auto payment and it goes through, you know, like things like that come into effect. That's that law of abundance. And that's where I gave you those gratitude journals that if you want to, if you're having a hard time seeing abundance in anything, like use that as a gratitude/abundance piece, right? Like anytime I look at and think, okay, there was some really disturbing news I received yesterday. And first I went to, man, this was like a whole day before my son and daughter-in-law told me about this, right? And then I was like, whoa, wait, it's not about me. But then I think about like the abundance of friends that I have that I know I'm loved, right? Like I'm not in this dark space to do something to myself. And like all of these things, like even the like, for lack of a better word, I don't like to use the word bad because it puts judgment, but like even these things that happen in our world that we're not real happy with and in our lives, where can I find abundance in that? Where can I find the miracle in that? You know, I believe either everything is a miracle or it's not. Right. And so how can we start to shift our gaze towards that so that when we look at abundance, we see abundance everywhere, right? Like one of my favorite posts was I cracked an egg that Joni's chickens had made for me. And I was so grateful and I cracked it. And my favorite part of the egg is the yolk, right? Like nothing's better than having a yolk and like sticking a piece of gluten-free toast in it. Well, actually really gluten up toast, but like sticking some like toast in that egg, right? And letting it soak it up. Like I just love yolks. And it had 2 yolks in it, right? And so I'm like, oh my gosh, there's abundance, right? So the more and more we see abundance, the more and more we see the resources that we need in order to create the effect that we want. Right? Because sometimes we say we want this thing and we have these double binds and these things that stop us. But the more and more we see abundance, the more and more familiar we become with seeing the how, right? With seeing what's coming our way that may be different than we ever imagined, and then being able to step into it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I know both of you are processing. I see it.
Okay, well, I just want to make something that's been on my mind that you don't even need to address today. It's because my mind is like taking this all in and then thinking, okay, so the letting go, the more we want something, the more we like chase after something, the further it gets, the more it's repulsed from us. So a lot of it is about the letting go and allowing, I guess, like the growth of like seeing, but then it's like seeing more of what I want. But if I want it, then it gets away from me, and I get confused by that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the yin and the yang, right? Like if you can imagine the yin and the yang, meaning that you need to know what you want, but it's from a higher place, right? And it's the knowing that I want to, I'm just going to make this up, right? Like any of the goals that I have in here, like I want to make $250,000 this year. It's actually more than that, but I'm just using, $250,000 this year. That's the desire I have. So what happens is the universe says, I got the how. You just be open to the how. I'm not chasing that. That's the difference between power and force. So there's this art and science to this, right? So when you want to make $250,000, it's about letting go of the worry about how you're going to get there. Right. And then it's like being open to receiving what's coming to you about taking inspired action. And sometimes, poof, the money just shows up. Right. I was talking to my friend Kathy today because we've been having this back and forth about, when I first start talking to people about this like law of vibration and things coming to you, I'm like, in order to get the free drink at Starbucks, you have to at least go into Starbucks. You have to take the inspired action. Like that's the first level when I'm talking to people. Then it's like, well, really, you don't have to go into a Starbucks to get a free drink, right? Somebody could be dropping one off at the office for you and just say, I was thinking about you. Here's a free Starbucks drink. Right. So there's different levels of understanding and we start at different points. So the how is where you have to let go. Because when you let go, the how comes to you. Right. And that's where people do get confused because they're like, then how do I know that's really not me trying to chase it or do the push, right? Versus the pull. And sometimes that's just learning to trust your gut instincts, right? So Chantel, one of the beautiful things that I heard you say is, okay, Debbie, I took your advice and I wanted to kind of sleep on it. I wanted to check in with myself to see where that landed, right? So you've been working on trusting your intuition. So if you say, I want to have a thriving practice with whatever, right? Like you have your goal out there. The letting go is in the how. The opening up to receive is then the steps, the inspired action to go. And faith is knowing that if you take that first step, the next step will appear. And what happens in our world, though, is we think that all the steps have to be Moses on Mount Sinai getting the 10 Commandments, like these big, right? When in fact, like I tell people, both of you, one of your first steps was to sign up to do this mastermind. Then the next step was showing up to the calls, being open to receiving information. The next step is being open to realizing, oh, let's have a conversation with my therapist to see if they'd be open to having other people. Oh, they're on board with that. So the next step, they're rewriting their bios. Then they'll start to accept other patients and bam, you've got your full books, which was what you wanted. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not squeezing it to death. I'm holding that goal lightly.
Yeah.
That's so much easier to say than to do.
Oh, totally. Right? Because we're trained the opposite. Yeah, we're trained to do the opposite. And Shauna, I see a lot of you and me, and a lot of me and you, meaning that when I get fearful, man, I choke the shit out of something, right? Like it's like, and I mean that in a very loving way, right? Because
No, it's true.
I want to control it. When I feel fear, I want to control. And so I always tease that I'm like a dog with a bone that won't let go. Even when I know it, I'm being like goofy about it, right? And so Chantel, I don't know what your pattern is yet. I haven't like, I'm just relating to Shauna on that one, but we each have patterns of what we do. And I used to know your pattern, Chantel, but I haven't seen that pattern in you. Because you used to just kind of like stick your head in the sand and not,
Yeah. I'm changing.
I know, but you don't do that anymore. That's why I'm like, I haven't put my foot, like my finger on anything yet, because you're not doing that anymore. You've evolved, right? And so part of this is we look at the law of cause and effect. Oh, well, let me back up. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
And thank you for asking that, because there's so many, like, when I say nuances, I don't mean like nuances like you're going to miss them, but the laws are so not black and white. And that's the art, is understanding that. So a lot of times people will say, oh, I have my vision board and I put this house up there and I put this car, all the things, and I put this like peaceful atmosphere and this and this and this, and I didn't get them. And so for me, the question I would ask first is, did you believe it? And is that truly a desire of yours? You know, and I'm not saying it's not okay to have like the big house. I have this house on, I can tell you the road it's on, 4th and Michigan, that I've been wanting to go up and knock. I'm not being a very good coach here by telling you this, but I've been wanting to go up and knock on their door and say, if you ever want to sell your house, will you please call me? Because I'm petrified that they're going to want to sell their house this year, and how like the universe isn't going to take care of it. Right? Like there's this part of me that's like, ooh, that's the growth edge, right? And so that's kind of the same thing. Like if you want something, to take an action towards it. And sometimes what happens is exactly like what happened to me, where I created this big vivid vision because I thought that's the direction that I wanted to go. And then I realized, oh, I'm going down the wrong path, right? So my body started telling me I was out of alignment. I was not feeling like jazzed about, like, I wasn't leading my lit up life, right? So you get messages along the way. The key is to listen to those. And it's not just, oh, one thing happens and so I have to shift. It's looking at 2 or 3 things that occur and it's like, oh yeah, something's off here. I need to look at this, right? Or something's on, right? Like even if you're questioning, am I going the right way? And then all of a sudden your therapist was like, right on, I can't wait. I'm writing my bio. And then the next thing you know, she's going to book 2 or 3 clients right away. Like that to me is evidence in the evidence bank that that is the right decision. Does that help? Okay. I could talk about this stuff all day. And it leads right into the law of cause and effect. And so sometimes people get really caught up in this law with judgment, right? And so I always wait to talk about this one until people have worked with me for a while, because personal responsibility is a piece of it. Just like we were talking with both of you, and like Shauna, the personal responsibility of saying, yeah, I'm nagging and I don't want to nag. And then saying, okay, what kind of actions? Because if the desire is that you want to be free flowing, the way to get there is here. We just have to listen to it. Right? But it doesn't mean beat yourself up if you're not hearing it, because we've been trained not to hear it. Right? So the law of cause and effect says nothing happens by chance, that everything in the world that we experience is a cause set in motion that creates an effect. So it's really an effect of a cause set in motion. Does that make sense?
Could you repeat, please?
Sure. So everything we experience is an effect of a cause set in motion. Or a lot of times what you'll hear me say is we're always in cause. It just depends on what effect we want. So me laying in bed an extra 15, 20 minutes this morning, hitting snooze, created the effect that I was late picking up my friend to borrow my car. No big deal, because I just texted her and said I'm running behind, right? But the point being is that all of these causes, and sometimes the cause started a while back, right? And the effect is what we're seeing. You know, like I didn't just magically gain 50 pounds in a day, right? Like that was a course of, and I'm not saying that in judgment. I just mean like it's a course of time. So you can't expect to then flip a switch and have 50 pounds just drop off your body, right? So then it's what am I doing on the day to day? What are those things that I'm doing consistently? And keep in mind that consistently doesn't mean every day. It's a cycle, right? Like you're doing it more than you're not doing it. Then that creates the effect. So I think I've told this story before. Did I tell you the story about going to the post office and not to the gym?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I use that story a lot because it's just about reminding your brain about what effect you want. So if I want to clean out my house and I go to sit down and okay, I'm totally being transparent here. And I get obsessed by the Olympics. And every night I go sit down at about 8 o'clock and start watching the live thing until 11 o'clock. I'm going to get out of bed later, right? Like that's just an effect of me going to bed later. And that's okay for me right now. But then if I want to do something else, I have to look at what am I doing? What inspired actions am I doing to create that effect while not pushing, not chasing? So sometimes the cause is opening up. Sometimes the cause is spending time meditating so that my heart space is open to receive during the day. Sometimes it's taking the nature walk. Sometimes it's having a morning routine where you do things to set up the rest of your day. Like if I want to have a relationship with someone, let's use that as an example of cause and effect. If I want the effect to be that I become really good friends with someone, what might be some causes or inspired actions that I would take to be good friends with that person?
Reaching out to them more often.
Yeah. Inquiring about their day, finding out more about them, right? Like
paying attention to their things.
yeah. And I'm using this kind of simplistic example to help you see like anything that we put into effect or anything we do as a cause puts an effect in place. And so that's where sometimes you may have heard, I used to use this in corporate all the time, is what you're doing getting you closer to or further away from your goal. And sometimes if it's getting you further away from your goal, it might be getting you closer to a different goal, or you might be doing it because of something else, and that's okay, but you have to check yourself to make sure that then you're not sabotaging getting to that. You know, like I see that happen a lot with people too, where they get busy and they think they have to have the website and they have to have this and they have to have that and this and this, and they're in the service business when no, all you need to do is call somebody. Right? Like, and that's that cause and effect too, or this whole, if I build it, they will come. If I build this program, they're going to come. Okay, well, sometimes they will, but it's because you're talking about it, you're creating awareness about it, you know, like there's things that you're doing to help bring that in. So I'm using that example of a relationship. So anytime you walk into something and you think, oh, I really want this to turn out this way, then it's like, step back and think to yourself, what cause can I put into play? And when I say cause, it's not always inspired action. Sometimes inspired action is no action.
Why?
Meaning that sometimes, I'm going to use yours as an example. Sometimes the inspired action is sitting back and letting a person deal with the consequences that happen, even though knowing it will affect you to a certain extent, but the long-term effect is going to be what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we talk about inspired action, sometimes people think, oh, it's the get shit done, right? Like I got to have my list and got to have like all this action, action, action. No, the reason I say inspired is sometimes it's just being. Sometimes it's making sure you're grounding yourself. Right? And when I don't feel grounded, I'm just going to turn you on to a few of my favorite things. I have this grounding pad that connects into a grounded electrical wire. that I used to put my feet on, and then I was like, I keep getting tangled up. And so have been sitting on it, because whenever I feel like I have a lot of chaos, it grounds. It's a natural grounding, right? So sometimes it's even doing those things to help you. Although it's interesting because my heart rate's been up higher than normal. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. So see right there, like cause and effect. Like then sometimes it's just trialing things out and saying, okay, is this getting me closer to the effect that I want? Does that make sense, or is that confusing?
That
I think it
makes
makes sense.
Okay. And keep in mind, like I've been studying these laws since 2018, and I still learn every day from them. You know, like I was telling somebody the other day, I could do an entire weekend workshop on laws and people could come back every year and gain from it because you're different. So the laws mean something different and you start learning more nuances to them and start seeing them. So this law of cause and effect, what I love about it is you can have evidence in your evidence bank, right? As you work through some of this. So what happens though then too, my mentor up in Kelowna, Canada, British Columbia, right? Isn't that British Columbia? Yeah. Dr. Horsman says, you're never at point A and you're never at point B. You've always heard, you know, like you got to go from point A to point B, because the minute you see point B, you're no longer on A. And so what happens is when you get to B, B becomes A and you see what's next, right? That's like we're evolving over and over again. So when you reach that goal or reach that effect that you wanted, that effect then becomes causes of a new effect in a train of causation. Because all of a sudden, okay, I'll give you an example. So when I started out, I had a goal to make $225,000. And in 18 months, I made $225,000. I could have gotten caught up to say, oh, I didn't make it in a year. I didn't, right? Because I was well on my way and I thought, what the hell, right? Like 18 months is still pretty darn good to go from 38 grand as a side gig to 225,000. So that was the effect that I wanted. Well, when I got to that effect, that became the cause of a new effect because I saw that as an upper limit. And my upper limit has changed. And now I'm doing these things that are maintaining that. And now what are some additional causes that I can do? So if you think about like little train cars, right? It's like jumping the train car. And so it becomes this new effect, that A and B, and it helps me create those causes. Because if you think about the gap and the gain, here's where I was, here's where I'm at, here's where I want to go. Well, all of a sudden I'm where I want to go. That creates the new base floor that keeps me going because I'm looking at all these causes that I've been doing. And it then helps build that gain mentality to keep going. Does that make sense? I hate that when trainers always say, does that make sense? So I'm going to change that up. And so what happens is we're first cause. And it goes back to the themes here that like we take personal responsibility. Like if a situation occurs, I was talking to a friend the other day that coaches cross country track in high school, and she was so frustrated with the captains because she felt really disrespected by them. And I said, take what you like and leave the rest. But my mastermind sisters always say to me, what's the mirror? Right? Like if you're frustrated with them because they're not showing you respect, who's really not showing whom respect? And she's like, yeah, I'm not respecting myself because I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. Because I said, what frustrates you in others is usually something that frustrates you about yourself. So it's like, I'm so grateful when I get frustrated. Like, even when I get frustrated at other drivers, it's because I know that I'm pissed that somebody didn't stop because they're in the crosswalk and we are supposed to stop, because I've done that before. Accidentally, but I've done it. Right. And so it's that mirror. But what's really critical about this, excuse me, is to look with the lens of curiosity, because you can get into a huge judgment piece and really lower your energy very quickly here, right? You are 100% responsible, but it's because you have your superpower of choice. But in order to use that superpower of choice, you have to understand what the desire is. You have to know what you want. Because if I'm here and I know I want this, if I don't have anything over here, the universe is confused and I might take 4 steps this way and 4 steps this way and 4 steps this way. And I'm busy and everybody thinks I'm doing all sorts of stuff, but I'm not really getting anywhere. Do you see where I'm going with that? That's that whole thing of that art of we know we want this and we're specific, but we're not chasing it. We're letting go and saying, universe, you got this, right? Like you've put this desire on my heart. And I think that's critical too, is making sure to check in with whatever, for me, it's God, like checking in and saying, okay, there's a book I'm going to get you all to right back here. It's bigger. I just ordered it the other day, so don't order it, but it's called E Squared. And I don't have any idea why it's smaller than my iPhone, right? Like why this came in such a little itty bitty one. But I ordered regular size books that you'll be getting in Belize that we're going to look at, but it's about putting evidence in your evidence bank. So when I continue to put evidence in my evidence bank to show that these universal laws work, the more and more I'm able to open up my grip to let it happen. And then I'm in flow. Right? Like it's so funny. Joni and I were talking the other day about the more I play, the more I have people come in. Right. And I even said the other day, I'm like, okay, if I'm really supposed to be doing this because I feel like I've been doing the things I'm supposed to be doing, then I need for like a little olive branch here or something to come out, God. Like you got to show me somebody else that needs some help here. Cause I'm tired of pushing, right? Like, cause I've been pushing. And voila, somebody in my office walks in and says, I need your services. Like, whoa, okay. Thank you. Evidence bank, right? So when you think about this idea that your first cause, this is where choice comes in. But again, understanding and knowing what the desire is and having that be inspired desire, right? There's a spiritual level to this, whatever the spiritual belief is that you have, universe, God, whatever, and making sure that you feel in alignment with that. If you're questioning it, it doesn't mean that you're out of alignment. It means that you're not like, and it's okay to talk with a trusted friend, but I would recommend like talking to one another because you all are learning the laws together. Sometimes when you talk to people outside of like where you're learning this stuff, they're like, you're nuts, right? Or, oh yeah, go for it. And this, hopefully, you all are really good at asking each other questions to get you to self-identify, right? So we're first cause. And so everything that we set into motion returns to us. It's like a boomerang. So I want to give you an example. My best friend has an acronym. I don't know why they're always so big on acronyms, but because it took me years to learn the acronym. It's called SJGMW. Shit just goes my way. Or if you're talking to a kid, you say stuff, right? And what she says is basically a lot of this around universal law. It all goes my way if I choose it, right? If I'm at the airport and my flight's delayed, I can become a raving bitch, or I can just be like, you know what? I'm really grateful for whatever they found or whatever's happening that I wasn't up in the air when they realized a motor was going to go bad, right? Like that's that whole everything's a miracle or it's not. So if you think about it, and you've all probably had these where you've seen people or been experienced this, where people are just nasty. And what do they get back? Like, hopefully we're patient and try to be kind, right? But they're vibrating at this level that they're attracting then things that are vibrating at that level. Like when I hear people say, oh, I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop, I'm like, get out of that pattern because the next shoe is going to drop because you're expecting it. Right? So whatever we put into cause comes back to us. So to do a little bit of workshopping, well, let me stop and ask, like, what questions do you have about this? Or thoughts?
I can't think of any questions I have at this point. I'm sure later I will, after I've thought for a while.
So let's, oh, go for it, Chantel. I see you.
Well, yeah, thank you. I was just thinking to myself, any tips on not going into like a shame cycle if you're or shame spiral, say in that piece of like asking myself, uh, what cause did I put up there kind of thing. If I
Um,
have an awareness of something, if that makes sense. Like I've gained awareness, so like, oh yeah, like I've put something at cause, like how do I do that in a way that it's like just like really clean energy? It's awareness and yeah.
yeah. So first of all, you look at it and you talk about it just like you just did. Right? As easy as it is to say, pass the salt and pepper, right? Without a bunch of energy. But we end up having some energy around it because
Yeah.
we've had past experiences that potentially trigger us, right? So,
Hmm.
like, as an example, this news I received yesterday, when I went straight into my, well, wait a minute, you guys waited a full like 24 hours to tell me this? That was my core wound of I don't belong. Right. So I realized that very quickly and thought, like, honestly, within 30 seconds, and said, but there were times it took me weeks, and thought, no, Debbie, snap out of it. Core wounds aren't about this, right? Like, I'm not part of my daughter-in-law's family, right? Like I am, but I'm not, right? So it's okay that I found out differently. And so I had to walk through that because part of it's learning these tools and then also not beating yourself up if it takes you a week or 2 weeks, right? The cool thing is it takes, you become aware of it so much faster. And that's the noticing, right? What's happening, the miracle of that is the noticing. Then there are tools. Like sometimes we just have feelings and we got to feel the feels. So some of the tools that you even give some of your patients, Chantel,
Mhm.
like doing an anger project with somebody that gets it and knows how to do those, right? Like I've been with people that they were angry about someone in their life and they taped pictures to the bottom of their shoes and they went for a walk and talked about it and spewed about it until the
Yeah.
picture disintegrated, right? Like I've chopped wood and screamed. Like the important thing is to verbalize as you're doing this. I've burned
Mhm.
stuff and talked about like the irritation and gotten rid of it. I've thrown rocks and screamed "fuck you," like screamed. So I have to go somewhere where people don't think like there's a crazy person with it. But like, so sometimes you have to do an anger project. Sometimes for me, it's going out into nature and doing the nature walk that we did in the October retreat, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's taking a moment to find the joy, right? And sitting down and saying, okay, here's the situation that happened. I'm beating myself up because my critical parent is out. But what went right in this? Like, what did I learn from this situation? And what's the growth edge? Like, what am I supposed to be learning in this? And so sometimes for me, if I can shift it to go, oh, isn't that interesting? Like, I literally will say that out loud, right? And I learned that from Amira. Chantel and I both had Amira as a coach at one time. Like, I literally say, oh, isn't that interesting how that's showing up again? Because it helps me step back and go, oh, okay, right?
Mm.
And then I kind of slap my head sometimes and go, okay, dumbass, right? Like, get your shit together. Sorry, I'm cussing like a sailor today. Get your stuff together and like, it's okay. Feel the feels. If I want to go cry, I'll go cry. If I want to go, like, so listen to yourself in those aspects too, because that's a way to get that lower vibrational energy out of you.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, there are times I turn on my Spotify on Disney and I am belting out Akuna Matata. And I know people are driving by me laughing, right? Like, not that they can hear me, but they see like I'm doing the whole like dancing in the car thing, right? I'm holding onto the steering wheel, but I'm like, my grandson laughs at me because I'm like, it's time to car dance, right? And we're like, baby shark, dart, like doing our thing. So sometimes it's even about just doing something to let my body like eliminate. And sometimes you've seen me do this, like I'll do this when I feel like I have like some stuff I'm trying to like just shake it off. Music is a big one for me. What are things you guys have done before to keep yourself in a higher vibration?
So many of those things. I would add like the forgiveness practice, and a variation of that has been really helpful for letting go of stuff.
Yep. We're going to do another really deep forgiveness practice in Belize
Cool.
around money, but it can be used for anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I like sound stuff, so whether it's like music or just even like vibrating my own throat through like making sounds. Sounds funny, but it kind of is funny if you were an outsider looking in. But I just like might be going around like like
Yep.
that, just to kind of like, I don't know, tune myself, I guess.
Yeah, because it gets it out. And I don't know,
It
do you
gets it
guys,
out.
Chantel, do you get Spotify in Canada?
Yeah, I have Spotify.
Yeah, one of the things I love on Spotify too is you can go out and type in like chakra clearing.
Mm,
It will
mhm,
actually do like almost like a sound bath that we did, like, but it's attuned to all of your chakras to like
mhm,
open up that energetic piece of it. Yeah, and see, all of these are causes, and the effect is that you want to stay in a high vibration.
mhm,
You don't want to go into judgment. And so sometimes it's just a choice to say, oh, I'm judging myself again, right?
mm,
And so what's the judgment about? And is that true or is it false? And is it getting me closer to the effect I want? No, but I'm really pissed about this. So I think I need to call my friend Nicole and do an anger project, or I need to call my friend Nicole and just go laugh, right? Like, or I need to go hang out with Carter so that I can like laugh when he's like, Dad, you crack me up, right? Like,
mm,
so then think of those things that help you feel the feels, because that's important. And you know that too, Chantel. Like, it's important to get that out because otherwise it manifests in different ways. Like, I do
mm,
know anytime I need an anger project, it's because I'm yelling at other people driving.
mm,
Like, they can't hear me, but I'm like, come on. And sometimes it's simple. Like, have you ever driven around and seen how many people are in resting Grinch face when they're driving? Like, people
mhm,
look so unhappy when they're driving. So I've started the practice of like being conscious about when I get in my car, it's like smiling. If I'm not listening to my Disney tunes, I'm like trying to smile. And what's interesting is that's changing even the way I'm like vibrating as I go about my
mhm.
day.
Yeah.
And I know some of those sound really simplistic, but it really is
That was easy.
that easy,
Mhm.
right?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, it's that piece of like, what am I doing in the day to day, and the consistency, not necessarily meaning that it's something I'm doing daily, but I'm doing more so than I'm not doing, or
Yeah,
at least that's how I'm understanding that piece of it's about the collective of things
absolutely.
that we're doing.
Yeah, and Chantel, thank you for bringing that up because years ago there was a guy that wrote this little like table book, right, that you set out on your living room table or whatever, said don't sweat the small stuff.
Mm,
And I get his meaning about like the small stuff isn't stuff you worry about, but there are things that I don't think we sweat it, but it's those little things that make a huge difference.
mhm,
Just like if you think about playing the guitar, and I know I've been talking a lot in metaphors, but like if you're playing the guitar, one tiny little movement on the tuning piece can make it sound really good or sound really awful, right?
mhm,
And so it's just that consistent, like, how do I just slightly shift that? Because I know for me, I'll give you an example. I'm working with Joni. If I did all the stuff that she wants me to do right away, I get overwhelmed and I'm like, back off. So like for me, I'm really proud that I've done a few things like TMI. She's got me on coffee enemas. I've now done my second one. And like I'm proud of myself that I've done that. I'm proud of myself that I've started eating this and this and this. Have I done it in the eating window that she wanted me to? No. But I've been adding activity, like I have to add, I have to habit stack.
mhm.
And so sometimes it's just that slight little tuning that then leads you to the beautiful song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we didn't get to the worksheet, but feel free. And I know I'm the worst about Canva doesn't do a very good job with spell check, and I've become so frequently used to spell check. So there's in the like sixth word, there's a spelling error. So I'll go out and fix that. But feel free to use this. It's about talking about what's going well in your business, what's going well in your life, and leading you through like what are the beliefs and habits and inspired actions. And then were you all in? Because belief is a big piece of that, right? Like we have to understand point B, but we have to believe that this can happen. Because when we don't, that's like sending out a confusing message to the universe as well. So let me know if you have any questions about this worksheet. Otherwise, we'll be doing more on the law of cause and effect. And thank you so much for being here, you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
Have a good week.
You too. Bye.